Hi, guys. I'm Courtney,
And I'm Lisa.
and welcome to the next chapter in the Book of the Dead, brought to you by Darkcast Network, indie podcasts with a twist. Hello. Welcome to another chapter. Lisa is not with me today. She is prepping for a Christmas party. So it's just going to be me, but that's okay. Today's chapter is going to be unlike one we've done before in the sense that it deals with a topic that we've never covered, and that topic is the Amish. So, before we jump in, I'm going to give you a general background of the Amish, although I think most of you will have some semblance of an idea of what Amish is. So, according to AmishBaskets.com, the first Amish people came to North America from Germany in the 1700s, and they were members of a strict Mennonite sect led by Jacob Amann, which is where the word Amish is derived. The common misconception is that the Amish is a cult or a religion, but they're actually a strictly devout sect of Christianity. Now, Amish law forbids violence in any form and anything that promotes aggression, like sports. They also strictly forbid against military service, so they are seen as pacifists, and they prefer to forgive acts of violence. And because of this, there is rarely any punishment seen in response to violence, and they believe in responding to injustice by doing good, and they strive for harmony in everything they do. Modesty is incredibly important to them, which is why most people in Amish communities are usually dressed in simple clothing, in muted colors, or in only black and white, and they don't take pictures to avoid promoting ideas of vanity. They live traditionally and earn their money by farming, carpentry, basket making, and things like that. Their primary form of travel is by horse and buggy, and most members of the Amish community don't use electricity. They don't have phones, and they don't use the internet. They have strict rules around courting, and the Amish is broken up into 4 main groups with separate subgroups branching off of them. Typically, when someone hears the word Amish, the group that naturally comes to mind is Old World Amish. They are the most strict in their values and rules, and while, again, not a cult, this strictness is why people believe the Amish community is one. While one is free to leave the Amish community, it depends on a lot of factors, whether or not the person will be allowed back. And their biggest form of punishment is called shunning, which means other members of the community will completely avoid the person being shunned. Quote, this occurs when a member willfully violates ordnung and is out of concern for the well-being of the individual as well as to protect the flock. And ordnung is the order of things, how they do things, the rules by which they live by. The next group is New Order Amish, and they are a bit more progressive. They allow more modern farming technology, telephones in the home, and some other forms of technology, although the internet, automobiles, television, and radio is still all prohibited. They also allow Sunday school and missionary work in more brightly colored clothes. Then there is Beachy Amish Mennonite, and they are very different from the other two groups. They don't require private worship. They have meeting houses, Sunday school, and Bible school. They don't require anyone to speak German, and they allow cars and filtered internet use. They also support missionary work, and they don't practice social shunning. They still prohibit television, though, and radio, and women still have to cover their heads, and married men must have a beard like in the former groups. Finally, there is Amish Mennonites, although they have dropped Amish from their name to separate themselves from the old world and its traditions. They still have a heavy emphasis in faith and doing good, but they are more lax in how men dress and style their beards, and they allow the use of cars and electricity in the home. Now, this is just a very general overview of the Amish and the culture, but I wanted there to be a better understanding of what being Amish means. I also wanted to emphasize the fact that violent crime is not something that is often seen in Amish communities, which makes this case such a big deal. This is the murder of Barbara Weaver. Barbara Weaver was born on February 2nd, 1979 in Apple Creek, Ohio, and according to a neighbor, Mary Eicher, who was a Mennonite taxi driver for the Amish and would provide rides for those in the community if they needed to travel farther distances or pick up items they needed, said Barbara was, quote, a very friendly, sociable person. She was kind of laid back, but super nice, a gentle soul. In May of 1999, Barbara marries an Amish man named Eli Weaver, and they go on to have 5 children together. The Weavers are part of a subgroup of Old World Amish called Andy Weaver Amish, and this group was very conservative. According to A&E, they didn't allow computers, the internet, or cell phones. And the Amish also, in general, does not believe in divorce. Divorce is not accepted at all, and if a couple did pursue divorce, it would usually immediately lead to excommunication from the community, which will be important later. Now, by the time Barbara was 30, the Weavers were married for 10 years, and in the beginning, it seemed like they had a good marriage and they were happy. Eli owned a successful hunting store, and he was described as very outgoing. Mary Eicher said, quote, he would often come over fairly late in the evening and ask for a ride, and he was very considerate. He would apologize for interrupting me. He had charm. However, the Weavers started to have problems, and it seemed like Eli started changing in a way that really upset Barbara. According to the New York Post, in a letter that Barbara wrote to a counselor, she said, quote, where did my friend, love, trustworthy husband go? He hates me to the core. And Eli had changed. Twice he had left his family to live the English way of life, but had returned both times begging for forgiveness, which was accepted, and he was welcomed back into his family and the community. Rebecca Morris, the author of A Killing in Amish Country, Sex, Betrayal, and a Cold-Blooded Murder, said, quote, Eli found that life outside was hard. He had to figure out how to make a living. I think he wasn't mature enough to handle life and responsibilities and marriage. And he had no conscience, clearly. He was also withholding money from his wife. Barbara's sister, Fanny Troyer, said that Eli wouldn't give his wife money to care for their children, even though his business was doing well. An Amish friend said that Barbara had been humiliated when Eli refused to provide her with money to buy ingredients for pies she needed to bake for church, and Mary Eicher said that he wouldn't even provide her money to go to the doctor. This Mary found out when she had given permission for Barbara to use her phone number as a point of contact for the doctor, and Mary overheard Barbara telling the doctor, or more likely the receptionist, that she would pay the bill as soon as possible. So clearly, there's starting to be this disconnect in the Weaver marriage. Eli is becoming controlling. He's not giving Barbara money for things that she needs money for. And, you know, in the Amish way of life, it's very traditional in the sense that men and women own their traditional roles. The man is the provider, he's the worker, and the women stay home, they take care of the children, they cook, they bake, that kind of thing. So there's obviously some discourse in their relationship now, and Barbara is confused because this is not the man that she thought she married. You know, in the beginning of their relationship, Eli wasn't like this. And you could chalk it up to immaturity, that Eli wasn't ready for marriage when he got married. But the fact of the matter is that he is married and he has certain responsibilities to his wife and his family that he's not doing. There was also allegations of abuse that were witnessed by the Weaver children of Eli shoving Barbara and grabbing her. But again, in the Amish community, there was nothing Barbara could do. According to the Post, an Amish leader said that if she reported this behavior, she would have been asked, quote, what did you do that your husband would treat you like that? Which is interesting to me, at least, considering the Amish don't believe in violence. It's interesting that that would have been the response to any acts of violence performed by Eli. Now, this was only the beginning of the cracks surfacing in the Weavers' marriage, and it would eventually come to a head. Not only was Eli clearly, as I said, controlling and allegedly abusive towards Barbara, he was also actively seeking out women to sleep with. Now, one of the rules of his community was that cell phones were forbidden, but Eli had a cell phone. And with this phone, he was an active member of different social sites, one of which was Moco Space, where he went by the screen name Amish Stud. Now, according to How Stuff Works, Moco Space is a social networking site similar to Facebook or MySpace, but it is specifically designed to primarily be used through a mobile device. When you set up an account, you can set your name, age, sexual preferences, your relationship status, and post pictures and customize your profile. And Moco Space also includes chat rooms where you can speak with other members and use forums and run classified ads. So it's a little bit more involved than other social media sites. And Eli was using it to find women to meet for the purpose of sex. And there was no denying what Eli was using this for, because his bio on the site said, quote, "Who wants to do an Amish guy?" According to Oxygen.com, Barbara eventually came to find out about these affairs, but she also knew she couldn't divorce Eli due to Amish law. According to Rebecca Morris, Barbara, quote, told a friend she wasn't afraid of Eli, but she was afraid of Eli's girlfriends and that somebody would be so jealous and wanting Eli so much they would harm Barbara. And according to a blog post written by Jim Fisher, the leaders of the community were also aware of these affairs with English women, and he would be thrown out of the community more than once, but they always welcomed him back when he repented. Everyone knows that Eli is unfaithful to his wife. He's having extramarital affairs. And the general consensus is, well, Barbara, there's nothing you can do about it. You're stuck with him, because if you leave him, you're out of the community. And when it came to Eli, every time they kicked him out, it was, well, I'm sorry. And they let him back in. So I think it was just handled poorly by the people that should have been there to help in some way, meaning the leaders of the community. Because Barbara's clearly stuck. There's not a lot she can do because they won't allow her to get a divorce. If Eli is aggressive towards her, violent towards her in any way, it's, well, what did you do to deserve it? And Eli clearly has some sort of addiction to sex. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose him with anything, but this man's going out and having affairs with all sorts of women, looking for women to sleep with. You know, clearly he has a problem. And the consensus is, well, get out. And all he has to do is say he's sorry, and they let him back in. So it's created this situation for Barbara where she can't really do anything. And she's now fearful that potentially one of Eli's many flings can come and harm her because they want Eli for himself, which is not a situation that anyone should be in. Now, in 2003, Eli enters into a relationship with a woman named Barbara Weaver, who was 10 years Eli's senior. At this time, Eli was 23 and Weaver was 33. According to Oxygen, Weaver was a Mennonite taxi driver who drove the Amish in the community around when they had to go far distances, just like Mary Eicher. She was also a married mother of 3. Eli and Weaver would go on to have a sexual relationship that went on for close to 6 years, and it was by 2008 that Eli really started to complain about his marriage. According to All That's Interesting, Eli started talking to people about killing his wife in the fall of 2008, but no one was taking him seriously. That is, except for Weaver. According to Eli, Weaver took the idea of murdering Barbara and, quote, ran with it. Over the course of the next few months, Weaver performed over 840 internet searches for poisoning, gases, and, quote, ways to get rid of someone, according to the Daily Record. And she and Eli debated on different methods of killing Barbara. At around 7 a.m. on June 2nd, 2009, one of the Weaver children ran to the neighbor's house yelling for help. At that point, Eli was fishing with friends on Lake Erie, so he wasn't home. Now, the neighbor runs to the Weaver's home with the young boy, and in the bedroom, under blood-soaked covers, was the body of Barbara Weaver, dead from a gunshot wound to the chest. According to that post by Jim Fisher, at 11:30 a.m., Wayne County Coroner Dr. Amy Jolliffe pronounces Barbara dead at the scene, and Dr. Lisa Kohler, the Summit County Chief Medical Examiner, performs the autopsy and confirms the cause of death was a gunshot wound to the right side of Barbara's chest. The time of death was estimated to be between 12 and 3 a.m., and the time of death was confirmed by Jolliffe to be an estimate, and the murder could have happened anywhere from 12 to 7 a.m., according to the Daily Record. Now, on Barbara's death certificate, they did list time of death as being 2 a.m., and Jolliffe did clarify that the only reason they put an exact time was because the death certificate required an exact time of death, not an estimate. But they believed that she could have been dead anywhere from 12 to 7. It could have happened anytime within that window. So I just wanted to make that clear because there's a bunch of different times that I just said, and the only reason that there was ever an exact time even given was, again, because the death certificate required one. Now, a firearms expert with the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation identified the recovered shotgun pellets as most likely belonging to a .410 gauge shotgun. So they have a description of the weapon. Now they need to find the weapon. Detectives with the Wayne County Sheriff's Department then seized 2 shotguns matching the description of the murder weapon from Eli's hunting shop and recover a box of matching ammo from the Weaver's home with 1 shell missing. They also find some cash sitting out, which led them to believe that this was not a robbery gone wrong. It's also worth mentioning that they didn't find any fingerprints except for those belonging to the Weaver family, and they never found the actual murder weapon. They found weapons that could have been the murder weapon or match the description of the murder weapon, but nothing that they were able to definitively say was the gun used to murder Barbara. So then Eli comes home and the police question him. Now, Eli denies any and all involvement in his wife's murder, and according to Eli's friend David Yoder, they left to go fishing at around 3 a.m. the morning of the 2nd. According to All That's Interesting, while Eli had an alibi, he definitely wasn't home from 3 a.m. on. Friends and neighbors of the Weavers pointed police in the direction of Raber, who did not have an alibi for the night of the murder. Now, when police spoke to her, she admitted to having the affair with Eli, but she told police that it had actually ended 6 months prior and she was home with her husband on the night of the murder. Then someone very interesting came forward. A woman by the name of Dandy Heasley contacted police and told them about the relationship she had had with Eli. She also told them about how they had met on the internet and about Eli's secret phone. She also told police about the comments he had made about Barbara and how he was unhappy in his marriage and suggested that he wanted to know how to kill someone and get rid of his wife for good. Then other women started coming forward with the exact same story. So police really want to find this phone. According to Oxygen.com, Dandy makes a new profile on a dating site and sends Eli a message asking for him to call her. And he does. So now police have Eli's phone number. And with this, they can start looking into his text and call records. And these records tell quite a story. First of all, the phone is registered under Raber's name, and once they get the phone records, police learn that Raber lied about their relationship ending. Not only did the phone log prove that they were very much still a couple, but it showed messages between the two discussing the murder of Barbara Weaver. According to All That's Interesting, some of the messages read, quote, "I thought if we could get that fly poison stuff in a spice cupcake, she might not detect it." And that was from Raber. Eli responds with, quote, "Maybe you could blow up the house." Raber says, quote, "What about your children?" And Eli responds with, quote, "They'll go to heaven because they're innocent." So according to Eli, if his kids died in the process of killing his wife, well, they're just collateral damage. On June 10th, both Eli and Rayber are arrested for Barbara's murder and charged with aggravated murder. According to court records, and this will be important later, Rayber is arrested outside her home in the early hours of the morning of June 10th. She's read her Miranda rights and she asked for counsel. Now, when Detective John Chewy asks if she wants a lawyer, she says no. She is brought to the Wayne County Sheriff's Office where she confesses to killing Barbara, but she refuses to write a written statement. The next day, she is interrogated to clarify some of the details of the crime, where she asserts her right to counsel and the interrogation is stopped. Now, in her confession, according to the Post, Rayber said that Barbara's death was an accident. She just meant to scare her. She said she took the gun from her husband's gun cabinet and arrived at the Weavers around 4:30 a.m. She went in through the basement door and went to the bedroom. She said, quote, "I never intended for anything to happen, but when it did, it was like, oh crap." However, Rayber later recanted this confession and claimed she had no memory of going to the Weaver home, according to A&E. On August 17th, Eli agreed to plead guilty to conspiracy to commit murder in exchange for his testimony against Rayber, and he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Rayber goes to trial on September 16th, 2009. Now, unfortunately for Rayber and her trial, she did a lot of talking to her cellmate in jail while waiting for the court proceedings to begin, and her cellmate was called to testify. Dina Unangst, Rayber's cellmate, told the court how Rayber purchased a .410 gauge shotgun, which, again, is the gun determined to most likely be the murder weapon, although they never found it, after Eli had consistently told her he didn't love his wife and wanted her dead. She also allegedly asked Dina if she knew how long fingerprints would last on a gun. And Larry Miller, the owner of a local gun store, testified that Rayber had purchased the shotgun matching this description in November of 2008. Then Eli takes the stand. Eli claimed that Rayber took the idea of killing his wife and ran with it, and had even given him pills to poison his wife at one point, which he backed out of doing. He then said how on the day before the murder, he informed Rayber that he would be leaving to go fishing at 3 a.m., to which Rayber, according to court documents, said that that would be the perfect time to kill Barbara as Eli would not be home. So Eli said he would leave the basement door unlocked for her, and at 3:25 the next morning, Rayber texted Eli saying she was scared and asking where he was, to which he replied that he was in Worcester fishing and to make sure she didn't leave any evidence behind. He then went on to say that they had a conversation in his barn the day before their arrest where Rayber told him what happened the day of the murder and apologized for everything. Eli then said that Rayber asked him how to clean a gun so it would look as if it hadn't been fired. Additionally, Eli testified that after the murder, Rayber suggested they change their phone numbers so they wouldn't be traced, and she had actually had Eli's number changed. According to these court records, a David Weaver, not related to Eli, said that he had been asked by Rayber to leave a voicemail for Eli that said, quote, "Eli, you can run, but you can't hide. Obviously, we got the wrong person last night." Now, I'm assuming this voicemail was left to try and throw police off of maybe her trail, Eli's trail, but it clearly didn't work because they got to Eli and Rayber anyway. But she got someone else involved in this plot by leaving the message, although he was not charged with anything, David Weaver. And I believe that was in exchange for testifying that she had asked him to do this. They weren't going to charge him with anything. It was also discovered that Rayber had access to another .410 gauge shotgun, one she had borrowed from a friend a few years before that she had never returned. So not only did she have access to the .410 gauge shotguns through Eli's store, she purchased one a few months prior, and she borrowed one years prior that she never gave back. Now, again, they never found the murder weapon, so I don't know what she did with them. No one knows what she did with either the gun she purchased or the gun she borrowed. They, I guess, never found them, or if they did find them, they weren't necessarily the guns used to commit the murder. So it's interesting that they went to trial anyway. Technically is circumstantial. She had access to these guns. She had purchased a gun. She had borrowed a gun, but they never found the gun. So it's circumstantial. She could have used one of these guns to kill Barbara. Now, even though the defense did what they could to try and prove that Eli was really the one to kill Barbara, the jury ultimately found Weaver guilty of aggravated murder, and she was sentenced to 23 years to life with the eligibility of parole in 2032. Now, Barbara did appeal the conviction in 2010, and the basis for the appeal was that she felt her testimony to police should be thrown out because she didn't have a lawyer present when she confessed. However, if you remember, she initially waived her right to counsel, and when she asserted that right, the interrogation was stopped, so this was dismissed. She also said that the text messages and computer records should be thrown out, but there was no basis for that, so that was thrown out as well, and her appeal was denied. In the end, Barbara Weaver lost her life because her husband would rather she be dead than be looked down upon by his community, and the Weaver children lost both their parents. Now, they were taken in by Barbara's sister, and according to Mary Eicher, they are doing well but want nothing to do with their father, which I fully understand. And Eli's parents have also allegedly washed their hands of him, and he is to be shunned by his community upon his eventual release, which could potentially be next month because that is when he is eligible for parole. So this case was very sad in the sense that Barbara Weaver, by all accounts, and unfortunately there's very little information about her because of the community in which she was a part of, not believing in photographs and technology and things like that. There's no physical idea of who she was, what she looked like. It's just the reports that she was a very kind, loving woman. And she was unfortunately stuck in a marriage with a man that didn't love her, wanted to be free to sleep with who he wanted and do the things he wanted to do, couldn't commit to whether or not he wanted to live the English way of life or live the Amish way of life, and instead treated his wife terribly and got involved with a woman that decided she would kill for him. And this was really because, at least according to court records and attorneys, that because Amish is against divorce, Eli figured that if he pursued a divorce, he would be shunned. But if Barbara died, he would essentially be patted on the back, like, I'm so sorry for you. Your wife died. You're a widower now. I'm so sorry. You have to raise these children by yourself. So that was essentially the motive. I mean, you could argue, because the time of death was between 12 and 7, that Eli could have killed Barbara himself, but I don't think he did. It seems, based on what Barbara said, or what Weaver said, that she did it. Now, she took it back. It could be that she was covering for him, but I don't think that's the case. I think Eli said that he wanted his wife to be dead, and Weaver said, I'll do this for you. It's sad, and unfortunately, I don't think he got enough time because he took the plea deal, and he got only 15 years. He could be released next month, and yeah, he will be shunned by his community, but he just gets to go on with his life, and Barbara's life was taken from her. That was the murder of Barbara Weaver. A very sad story, one that's, again, a little bit different than the ones we've covered. The first one in Amish country. And that's about it. Lisa should be back in the next one. We may or may not be back next week, but because next week is Christmas Eve and I work retail, we'll see what happens. You'll have an episode either way. It'll either be a re-release of an older episode, it'll be a look at a Patreon episode, or it'll be an episode from one of our friends over at Darkcast Network, which you should go check out all the pods there. But either way, you'll get an episode. It just may not be one that you'll get a new episode either way. But either way, I will see you in the next chapter. And Lisa should be back, as I said, and we hope you have a wonderful week. Have a wonderful holiday. Happy Hanukkah to those that celebrate. I believe Hanukkah just ended for you, but happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas to everyone that celebrates. And we will see you in the next one. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this chapter of the Book of the Dead. And don't forget that you can always connect with us on Instagram. You can connect with us on Twitter, and you can absolutely connect with us on Patreon. We also have a merch store as well that we have frequent discount codes coming out for, so that you guys can get merch hand-drawn by myself at a better cost.
We hope you have a lovely rest of your week. And just remember, please be kind.
And don't forget to always stay safe, stay curious, and stay vigilant. Bye, guys.
Bye.